Well, during a speech at the State Department, Secretary of State John Kerry laid out the U.S. support for a two-state solution. And in his remarks, Kerry reiterated the Obama administration's support for a peaceful way forward for both Palestine and Israel, and stated if Israel goes down a one-state path, they will never be at peace with the rest of the Middle East. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has responded to Secretary Kerry, calling his remarks biased against Israel. In a statement, Netanyahu said, like the Security Council resolution that Secretary Kerry advanced in the UN, his speech tonight was skewed against Israel. Ambassador Danny Danon joins us now. He's Israel's permanent representative to the United Nations. Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us.
Good afternoon. Happy to be here.
Is the two-state solution officially dead?
No, but in order to move forward with any solution, you need direct negotiations. And what happened last Friday, the fact that the U.S. decided not to support Israel at the Security Council, it actually sent a message to the Palestinians: stop talking with the Israelis. You should come back to the UN. That's the place to negotiate. And that's the main mistake. And that's why we are so upset and so disappointed from the decision of the U.S. administration not to veto this one-sided, shameful resolution.
Now, this UN resolution, there's no mechanism of enforcement. There's no repercussions that Israel particularly is going to face with this particular vote. So why is Israel so hot under the collar over this? Can you explain that to Americans who don't understand why your country is so
Because
upset?
we want and we hope that one day we can achieve peace with the Palestinians. But in order to do that, we will have to negotiate with them, to sit down and to negotiate. We did it with the Egyptians, we did it with the Jordanians, we negotiated and we achieved peace. But once the UN Security Council decide what will be the outcome of the negotiations, it actually tells the Palestinians, you don't need to recognize Israel, you don't need to condemn terrorism, you can continue with the incitement, keep coming to the UN, and here you will get whatever you want.
I'm very surprised to hear you say that you believe a two-state solution is not dead, because as long as I've known you, you've been more of an advocate for a one-state solution, where you believe Israel should, have the entire territory and Palestinians would be there but would not be granted citizenship. That has sort of been your take on that. Why do you believe that a two-state solution is possible?
Prime Minister Netanyahu said it many times, that he is willing to negotiate everything. We have our own demands, but we are willing to negotiate. And he said, I'm willing to come to New York, to go to Ramallah, to do it in Jerusalem, but through negotiations. Adapting one-sided resolution at the UN, it's something which is not productive. And that was the policy of the US. President Obama himself came to the UN in 2011, and he said we can promote peace, but not through UN Security Council resolutions. So what changed? Why now? That's because of the timing of the change of guard at the White House, but it's not beneficial for the peace process.
I'm wondering how concerned and how realistic this is that Israeli officials, is there any concern in Jerusalem that they could potentially face war crimes in The Hague or any sort of tribunal over settlement building? Do you think that's something that could be a possibility in the future?
We know that the Palestinians will continue to seek support in international organizations, in courts, and they will find other venues to win. But it's not a real victory. Because in order to win, to support their people, they have to come and negotiate with us. Until they will not be willing to recognize us. Say, we recognize Israel, a Jewish state, now let's talk and let's negotiate. It will not help them. Not the UN resolutions, even if they will go to other organizations, it will not be helpful.
Why does Israel feel such a strong need to build settlements when the entire international community practically is so dead set against it?
We heard so much about the settlements in the last few days. The settlements are not the real obstacle to peace. We have proved it. We evacuated all the Jewish communities from Gaza in 2015. You cannot find even one settler today, a Jewish settler in Gaza. And look what happened out of Gaza.
Yeah, I know. I understand. You guys always cite Gaza, the 2005 withdrawal. But I'm asking particularly about settlements. It really drives many in the international community nuts when Israel does it. So why sort of raise the ire and do this? What's the argument for settlements?
For the Palestinians, all of the existence of Israel, it's one big settlement. The PLO, the Palestinian Liberalization Organization, was founded in 1964, before we liberated Jerusalem and the Judea and Samaria. So it's not about the existence of Jews in Judea and Samaria. It is about the existence of Jews in all of Israel. And if you ask the Palestinians, they will not tell you, yes, we accept Israelis who live in Tel Aviv or in Haifa. They'll tell you, no, we don't accept Israel at all.
You know, I was reading George Mitchell's book over the past couple of weeks, and there's a passage about you. Do you know he writes about you in his new book? He calls you, he says...
Well, Secretary Kerry spoke about me in his speech, so now
he did. You're famous here. Yeah. So he tells that you are a secular and successful businessman in Israel's booming tech sector. From a perspective, settlements are less about fulfillment of biblical promises and more about Israel's security. It is fascinating. You are secular, you're a successful businessman, but you feel so strongly about settlements. Why is that?
Well, I think it's not only about myself. Most of the Israelis who are secular feel connected to Jerusalem, feel connected to the land of Israel. You know, when I was at the Security Council last Friday and I saw everybody voting against Israel, I felt strong because I had the Bible with me. And we believe in our rights, our historical rights, our legal rights. But still, even though we think we are right, we are willing to sit down and negotiate everything. Unfortunately, it is not the case among the Palestinians.
You spent years as the head of the Yesha Council, which is an organization that works with settlement building.
Actually, I don't think that wasn't me. That's what I think somebody else.
I want to just say that but settlement building is very close to your heart for many years. Is that correct?
Well, I think that the existence of Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria should not be the obstacle to peace. Take example Israel today.
Yeah.
We have more than 1.5 Arabs, Israelis, who live in Israel. Nobody is saying we should transfer them to another country. We accept it. They are citizens. I don't understand why Arabs and Jews cannot live together also in Judea and Samaria.
Have you ever been to a home destruction in the West Bank where you've seen a Palestinian
Well, I have seen
lose their
the home destruction of Jewish communities.
But have you seen a Palestinian?
Who were built illegally.
But I'm just curious, have you witnessed a Palestinian home being destroyed?
I have seen destruction of homes
Palestinians,
in Israel. I can tell you one thing.
But not Palestinians.
It's not an easy thing to see. It doesn't matter if it's a Palestinian or a Jewish home. It's not an easy thing to see.
But have you seen the destruction of somebody coming in to a home in Silwan or in East Jerusalem or the West Bank, a Palestinian home where they've lived for generations and watched it be demolished?
I have seen demolition of Jewish homes in Judea and
But you haven't seen Palestinians, though?
I have to tell you, I think it's hard to see it, no matter if it's a Palestinian or Jewish.
But I'm just curious, both here in Washington, one of the criticisms against Secretary Kerry is that they feel in Jerusalem that he's removed. He doesn't understand the situation on the ground. But the criticism on the other side of you and folks who are interested in settlement building is, have you ever watched a Palestinian home destroyed? It's fascinating. I've spent years watching this.
Well, I
wanted to say one thing. There's something that happens every time a home is destroyed of a Palestinian family that has lived for generations in that home. Watching the eyes of the children, the kids start with fear, then they watch their parents fall apart, and then it turns to anger.
Take everything you just said
and
say the same about a Jewish family and demolition of Jewish homes. It's hard for everybody. We don't want to see it.
But I'm just curious, Mr. Danon, I know on both American and Israeli policy and Palestinian, sometimes it feels like there's a void, that people making the policy at the top don't realize how it affects the people on the ground. So I'm just curious if you and the Obama administration, the Netanyahu administration, had a chance to actually witness what it's like in a community when somebody destroys
Well, I can invite you to see what it's like to see a terror attack in the streets of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and to visit the victims of terror in Israel. We are protecting our people. And I think the narrative that you are trying to pretend here is exactly the problem that Secretary Kerry had today in his speech. It's a one-sided narrative. It's not black and white. We proved it. We signed an agreement with the Egyptians, with the Jordanians, and today we have a strong peace. But the fact that Secretary Kerry did not mention what's happening today in Gaza with Hamas. Why nobody speak about Hamas? We took out all the Jewish communities out of Gaza, and instead of building a democracy in Gaza, they built a terror entity. And we don't want that will be the case in Judea and Samaria, and it can happen.
What's the first thing that you think Netanyahu will do when Donald Trump is officially inaugurated in office?
Well, I think they should meet. We have so much things to discuss. We are very thankful for the President-elect commitment to Israel, saying it very clearly. Being in the UN, it's not easy to be the Israeli ambassador to the UN, but hearing President-elect Trump say that it will change the reality at the UN, that the UN is focused so much against Israel instead of dealing with the real atrocities in the world, we hope to see a change.
It's going to be a busy couple years for you, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.